Welcome along to the GoPlay Soccer Podcast with host Manchester United Academy coach Tom Statham. At GoPlay, our aim is to bring people together from all across the world to discuss the beautiful game.
Welcome to the GoPlay Soccer Podcast. Tom Statham here, and today we're going to talk about foundation phase soccer. So that's boys and girls from 6 to 11 years old. If you'd like to make any comments or ask questions, please get in touch with us at podcast@goplaysoccer.com. That's our email address, podcast@goplaysoccer.com. Well, I've got three great guests today. First up is Rich Keeling. He's the lead foundation phase coach at Leicester City, the English Premier League champions of 2016. Later, Rich and I will be chatting with two coaches from the United States, Chris Koenig from the LaGrange Celtics Club in Chicago, and from the Boston Bolts, we have Andy Mason. But first, a big welcome to the GoPlay Soccer Podcast to Rich Keeling. Rich, thanks for joining us.
No worries, Tom.
So, Rich, tell me about your role at Leicester City.
Okay, so like you said, really, it's my job to kind of lead the boys in the foundation phase, which technically in the academy obviously start from under 9, but obviously we have the pre-academy boys as well. That join us at 7s and 8s, obviously on a non-signed basis, and competition as it is pretty big across the country for those 7s and 8s, the best 7s and 8s across the country. But you know that falls in my remit as well. But like I say, primarily it's the 9s, 10s, and 11s at the academy at Leicester to kind of oversee that program, manage sort of the day-to-day stuff, the logistics, but also the bigger picture stuff in terms of what gets delivered during the program, and how we kind of make things better each year and progress and become, the best we can possibly be.
And you mentioned the pre-academy. So for, again, people in the States that maybe aren't familiar with the English system, academy system, what's the transition from the pre-academy to the academy? What sort of age and
so we can sign a boy in May of their under 8 year. So technically a couple of months before they'll start as an under 9, that's when we can send forms in to officially sign them, if you like. Until that point, they are a grassroots player essentially. So they're playing still for their grassroots team, their local team. They may train 2 or 3 other professional clubs throughout those 2 seasons. Like I say, it gets pretty fruitful. There's the top boys are changed by a number of clubs.
So that's happening at the minute, isn't it? So at the moment, we've got, you'll be looking at lads to hopefully sign in sort of April, May time. Just like at Manchester United, we're looking at kids, and we've got competition from, City, Liverpool, Everton, all the clubs in the Northwest. And you're really competing for 8-year-old kids with the likes of Derby, Forest.
Which, when you think of it, is absolute madness.
Crazy,
it's nonsense, but ultimately that's the that's where we're at, and that's the system. That's the system. That's what we have to do. And those boys train with us. They play games with us. Not with the academy, obviously they're with the pre-academy, as we call it. But like I said, they could be training at 2 or 3 of the professional clubs, and it's.
So you could have. I think again, for people in America to appreciate, you could have an 8-year-old or 7-year-old when they first get on the radar, 7-8-year-old kid, and he's got, well, in the Northwest, he's got United, City, say Liverpool, and so on. You've got some of the biggest clubs in the world all trying to sign him at 8 years old, which is a bit crazy. I mean, and then in the Midlands, you've got some other clubs as well.
Yeah, no, we even compete. We compete with Spurs, and it's within Trump. So you've got Spurs, you've got Villa, Wolves, Birmingham, other Birmingham clubs, West Brom, Forest, Derby. So there's plenty of clubs that these boys are being touted round, and rightly so. As a parent, you'd want you to go and see different environments and find out which one's right for your son. But
and so talking about that, Rich, with the environment. So when you want to impress on the kids looking to choose an academy, or once the kids are into Leicester City's academy, what do you think is the best environment for young players?
the thing that all boys, any age really, but particularly at that age, all they want to do is just play football. You know, they want to come in and they want to. You ask them what they want to do. Oh, can we play a game? You know, they just want to play football. They're mad for it, absolutely mad for it. So you know, you've got to make that environment exciting. You've got to make them fall in love with what you do, basically. You know, think, oh, I love Leicester City. I love going to Leicester City. I love the coaches. I love the players that are there. Stuff that we do. It's so much fun. That's what you've got to make every single one of those kids.
So how do you make it exciting? So what sort of things do you do at Leicester to, you know, the kid arrives for training, you know, what do you do to make it exciting for him?
I think you've got to give them pretty what they want in terms of, you know, you've got to give them different types of games. So it can't just be a game. You know, you can't just spend their whole time playing a game with 2 goals and there you go, lads, off you go and play 7v7, 5v5, whatever it might be. You can't just do that. That's not going to develop them. Don't get me wrong, they'd love that, but you know, as a parent, ultimately the decision maker's the parent as well as the boy. They're going to look on and think, well, they're just playing games. You know? So you've got to the challenge of not only creating the environment that's right for the boy that they love it, but also you've got to have that sales pitch to the parent as well. You know, that's as mad as it might seem. You know, they're, like I say, the decision maker. But yeah, that environment for the boys, it's about creating different types of games that that they can enjoy. So things with goals in. You know, they ultimately what the kids love doing. They love scoring goals or stopping goals. You know, some kids like defending, so they love stopping goals, scoring goals. So any type of game with goals in it doesn't just have to be a traditional game. You know, there's lots of different practices that you can do.
So last night, as I say, last night, Rich, with the 9s and 10s at United, as they turned up, we had 3 different games for them. We had a game with an end zone. We got these big sort of cushion things that were like a barrier to pass it between the big cushions to get it into an end zone to score. That was one game. Another game was where one team attacks 2 little goals, mini pug type goals. And once you've scored in the mini pug goal, then your team attacks the big goal with a goalkeeper. And then there was another one where it's a similar one, but you've got to dribble the ball over the line, the end line. And then once your team's dribbled the ball over the end line, then you attack the big goal. So you've got 3 different games.
Absolutely. And what you've got in there is competition. Boys love competition.
Exactly, yeah.
They love trying to be the best one. So anything that's got a target or an end goal as such, where they can score a number of points or a number of goals, they're game for it. You know, I think we've got, you know, you've got nets that you can hang in the goals with targets in top corner, bottom corner, whatever else. You've got all sorts of stuff like that and gimmicky stuff that actually kids love. We've got big tractor tires that you can space out and they can try and chip into the tractor tire and stuff like that. And like you say, it's just being creative and using the resources that you've got and thinking outside the box a little bit with the type of activity that you do, where they can be competitive. They love that competition.
I think that's I really like what you say about being creative, because I think you've got to try and be a creative coach. If you want to develop creative players, you've got to be a creative coach and think of things like that. That tire thing, I've never even thought of that at all. That's great, chipping it into a tire. The kids would really like that. But the competition thing's really key. I was chatting to a coach yesterday from Canada, and he said, at what age do you let them compete? And I was like, they're competing all the time. You know, as soon as they come in the door, they're competing at, whether it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, everyone, you know, they always want to win every game.
And that's the thing, but there's a lot of talk in academies about, you know, is it about winning? Is it about development? Well, actually, look, it's always about development, because ultimately, like you just said, the boys want to win. You know, they don't go out on that pitch on a Sunday or whenever they play and think, I don't really want to win today. They want to win, of course they do. So it's always about development, but obviously winning is part of development. But they always want that. They've got that within them anyway. Otherwise, they won't be playing. So yeah, competition is huge.
And that sort of touched on the games program there. So in the games program, you know, how much do you look at that games program as wanting to get results? Or is that important? Is it sometimes important, or is it not important to you at all?
This is such a big discussion. You know, it's been discussed for the amount of, you know, I've been in academy football at Leicester and at Forest before that as well. You know, 14 years now I've done academy football in foundation phase, and there's always this discussion. It's always raised, you know, how much is it about winning? You know, how much should we put on the importance of winning? And like I say, the boys always want to win. And I think we've got to, if you look at a sliding scale, and that's the best way to look at it, of kind of kind of learning and winning. It's at different ends to a degree, and we've got to sit at that lower end of foundation. We've got to look at that development, and then as they get older, obviously then winning becomes part of it. They get into leagues at 16s, 18s and beyond, but we've got to allow mistakes. I think when you force winning, sometimes boys change the way they play. They'll start playing safe. They won't be creative. They won't try things because all of a sudden they're under pressure. If I do this, I might lose the ball. So they start thinking differently. Even at 8, 9, 10, they start thinking differently, and we put that pressure on, even if we don't think we are, by automatically saying, look, we need to win this today, or putting pressure on boys to win. It changes the way they play, and we'll lose that creativity. We'll lose that creative spark that we want to see.
But also that love of the game as well, Rich, because, for me, the most important thing at foundation phase, but at any phase really, is that nurturing, as a coach, nurturing the love of the game. And so as those kids come into the academy at 8 years old, they come with an enthusiasm that's very pure, and like I said, they're just desperate to play, and they love playing football. So how do you see that? How do you see that at Leicester City going about nurturing that love of the game?
Like I said, I think it's key to. I mean, just think, what would they do on the playground if you went and watched them at in the playground at lunchtime at school? What would they do? They'd stick some bags or coats down on the playground and they'd just go and play football. That's what they love doing. Like I said right at the start, and it's about creating that environment. Obviously, we've got to be able to progress and develop them, so we have to work on certain aspects of the game. But you can still do that in creative ways, like you talked about with the different types of games that you can do. You mentioned 3 games. I talked about different technical things as well. I think chaos. You know what I mean? Actually, in foundation phase, chaos is fantastic. And some people can walk in, wow, that looks crazy. You've got sometimes mixed age groups, so you mix 9s and 10s or whatever, and you've got 30, 40 kids in a smallish space doing lots of different things. It can look really chaotic.
But that
so
again,
lots of cones, lots of different coloured bibs, loads of balls flying around. But actually, within that chaos is loads of mistakes are going on, but at the same time, loads of experimenting is going on. And from that mistakes and that experimenting, you're getting learning, and that's huge. And at the same time, it's fun. As long as that's that environment, you're creating that environment where they can make mistakes, and you allow mistakes, then that automatically removes that pressure, and allows kids to express themselves more.
Yeah, one of the favourite things that I like to do is, say you've got a group of 20 odd kids really in a lot of the foundation phase groups at Manchester United. We have about 20 odd kids, so it's just to play one game. So it might be 12 aside, 13 aside, whatever, 2 teams, and just play a big game. Kids love playing 11, 12 or whatever aside, but we throw on 3 balls, and there's sometimes an extra ball sneaks on. There might be 4 balls or whatever. So all over the pitch.
Done it before. You can throw on a different coloured ball. That different coloured ball's worth 5 goals. All of a sudden, wow! Kicks into action, and just little things like that, little creative things that you can chuck in that spark that interest, and all of a sudden, the tempo ramps up again.
But maybe an inexperienced coach will think, because it looks terrible, in a way, if someone comes and looks at that game Absolutely. Of 13 aside, a load of 10-year-old kids playing 13 aside with 3 footballs, and it's just kids running everywhere, it's pandemonium really, then they can actually think that that's a really poor session. But to you and I, we can look at it and we can see, firstly, you see the smiles on the faces, and you hear the noise as well of just the laughter and the joy that sort of game's bringing. But then you look across on one side of the pitch, you've got shots flying in. You might have 2 shots at once, and the keeper's getting up and saving them. You've got the other side, you've got a 2v1 building on the left wing. On the right wing, you've got a 1v1. You've got some great defending. You've got someone blocking a shot. There's just so much football in those sorts of games.
And there's things like, the other thing we do again is we want music on. I think that music on, that's great. That lifts the tempo. Yeah. You get boys, when they score goals, they start dancing to the music or whatever, And the other, we do something called competitive edge nights, which really is just what we've talked about already. It's just games. It's lots of different games, lots of different challenges. But there might be we put stuff on the screens a lot. Our nines coach is really good at doing this, so they create stuff on PowerPoint, linking to the first team players or world teams, and got all the Champions League music or whatever else. You've got it on the TV screen at the start to introduce the games night. They then go and play the games, and at the end, it's all then the league table comes up or whatever else, or the players' names come up, and there's trophies or there's prizes or there's this or that, and it just enhances what you do. It puts a little bit at stake on it, and it increases that competition. And like you say, you get tears, but you also get cheers as well. And that's almost what you need.
And the kids love it. I mean, we do World Cups, and luckily we have some of the shirts. So for the Adidas teams, like that, Spain and all this sort of stuff. So the kids will actually have the shirt on, and we'll play 8 teams, World Cup, Group A, Group B, and then we'll have semi-finals and finals, and the kids just love it. But again, that really, hopefully people listening to this, you can see that this is, a kid coming into this environment with this much fun and all these things going on, then that nurturing love of the game it's got to be there. So
I think just quickly, Tom, I think that there is no limit on what you can try at foundation phase. Those kids are sponges. They will try anything. So for me as a coach, the more experienced I've got, just don't be afraid to try something new. And you know what, if it's not working, tweak it as you go along. Don't worry if it looks wrong or it looks chaotic or it looks messy. Just try different things and be experimental. Because that's what kids are at that age. They're experimental. They want to try new things and stuff as well. So I would say to coaches, be brave and just put on sessions that do look a little bit different.
That's great. So be brave. So if you were looking back to the start of your coaching career, Rich, what advice would you give? I mean, you're not that old now, really, but what advice would you give to a young Rich Keeling? So be brave is one of them. What other pieces of advice would you give yourself starting out?
That's a tough one, because like I say, your journey, you've gone through so much, it's tough to remember. I mean, I remember I started my coaching when I was like 14, taking like an under-9s group, I think it was, and I followed them all the way through eventually, but then doing my level 1 at 16, and I remember going in that sports school doing my level 1. It's like, your first ever qualification, and you could probably, really nervous doing your final assessment and stuff like that. But when you look back, actually, at how basic and simple that sort of stuff was then, having kind of 20 years experience, but obviously back then that was really, really tough. What advice would I give? Like I say, I think look at others. I think that's really important. Look at others around you, more experienced coaches, speak to other people, listen to podcasts, watch things on YouTube, and adapt what you see. Don't necessarily copy, because it might not be right. But what I've learned over the years is, you see things on courses and you see things that other coaches deliver, and you take little bits, you take little snippets, and you think, I like that practice, or I like the way that he delivered it, and then you build on that. So I think, probably just learn, watch lots of different sessions and practices.
Yeah, I'm really big on mentors, because I was so lucky when I was a young coach starting at United that I had some amazing people to learn from. People like Eric Harrison, legendary coach, Jimmy Ryan, who was a reserve team coach at the time, Pop Robson, Paul McGuinness, Tony Whelan. These guys, Brian Kidd, these guys were around, and I was just watching them and helping them out, and just, you said about foundation phase kids soaking things up. I was just soaking it up. But who did you have that was a mentor to you? Who did you look up to and spend that time with, and who really helped you in your development?
I think early on it was a guy called Chris Dowan, who took the course. I think he took my level 2, and he took my UEFA B, my level 3. He was the tutor on that, and he kind of had a good relationship with him. And he was the one really that, because I think he used to work at Forest. He was the one that kind of got me into Forest. It helped that the final assessment that we did for the B license was at Forest training ground at the time. And but Chris was great, and he really helped me and supported me through those qualifications, and like I say, really linked me up with Forest. And then I guess there was Tony Cook, who I think is at Doncaster now. But obviously Cookie at the time was like a assistant academy director at Forest. So again, he's had a wealth of knowledge, and he was great with me. I think I was only 1 when I started at Forest. I came out of pretty much coaching just the grassroots and just going through my basic qualifications, the B and the B, and that was completely different going into an academy environment at 21 years old when I'd played at academy level. I was at Leicester as a player for 4 years, and I'd been around Burton Albion and semi-pro kind of level as a player. But from a coaching point of view, I'd only really coached the sort of grassroots, so that was something really new. So having Cookie around was great.
Yeah, I know Cookie was around Forest, at a time when I obviously a few years ago I used to go from United there, and I always used to be really impressed with Forest because I think through people like Cookie, they had a really stable staff there and had a really strong identity.
Absolutely, the identity was really strong. It flowed through the first team right the way through to Lions.
And although it was different to the identity and the sort of the ethos we had at Manchester United, you still could identify when you went to Forest, things were done a certain way, and you always respected the knowledge and the experience and the way they were doing things.
But there's other people at Forest at the time. You had people like Steve Chettle and Jess, ex-pros that were kind of, it's great to, as a 21-year-old, I remember those guys playing. Yeah. It was great to be in the same environment as them and speak to them about their experiences as a player and their coaching and learning from them as well. I think
Steve Chettle,
ex-pros bring a lot to the, because they can bring their playing experiences to the table as well. So speaking to them was great.
Again, Steve Chettle, it was the same because I was brought up in Nottingham as well, but I was the same age as Steve Chettle, so I was at Notts County and he was a bit at Notts County at the same sort of time as me. And then later on, our paths crossed. He was in the academy coach at Forest, and I thought, because he had such a really good playing career at Forest. So you say ex-players are valuable, but I think they need to be like Steve Chettle was, and hopefully still is. Really humble, really down to earth.
Like I said, you could speak to him about anything. He was just you wouldn't know as an ex-pro. You know what I mean? He didn't have that kind of.
Definitely.
They've got ex-pro kind of thing about him. He was great, and you could talk about lots of experiences, and he was really good.
Brilliant. And so I think this is great for us to have these questions and chats amongst ourselves. But just to re-emphasize, if anyone listening to this, wants to ask a question or make a comment, then just get in touch at email podcast@GoPlaySoccer.com, and then we'll answer your questions, and hopefully people will benefit from this, and it'll help people working with young kids out there, whether it's in the States or in England or all over the world. Now, another thing that is really important to me, I say this, and I noticed you, I say variety is king. So how is variety incorporated in your program at Leicester City?
Yeah, I think the variety at foundation phase is more so than any other phase. Obviously, once they progress kind of into the youth phase, which for the guys in America is kind of starts from under 12s generally. Some academies in England still class the under 12s as foundation phase, but technically under the Premier League stuff, it's 12s and up is youth phase, and then from 17s, I guess, or under 18s as it's classed is the pro phase. But foundation phase really is where the variety comes. And the Premier League, we're lucky to have the Premier League's game programme. They offer Dean at the Premier League and the guys there, they offer such a vast amount of different things throughout the season. You've got futsal, which is obviously 5v5 indoor with a different weight ball. You've got power plays, which are kind of to music, sometimes futsal, sometimes it's in cages. You've got kind of national events where you get to play obviously all the teams across England in kind of competition. You've got little sort of five-a-side events, and then there's all sorts of things like they do like the cards, the match attack events where the boys kind of, I think, pretend to be a player or whatever else, and they mix up with other academy boys and stuff like that. So the variety that they offer is fantastic. But I think what we can do in-house and what we do in-house, and speaking to you and speaking to a lot of other guys at different clubs, I think, like I said, the foundation phase coaches are really creative, and they always come up with lots of stuff. And we'll play each other loads, won't we? We'll do informal tournaments, inviting 2 or 3 different clubs. I've done lots of stuff where I've done 1v1 and 2v2 tournaments. So, you might invite 2 other clubs. I think we did something a couple of years ago with Charlton and Ipswich. I think Hull were involved in one as well, where we had, I think there was a 4v4 game going on. and then I think there was 2v2s. So it was all mixed up. So you played everything. So some boys were playing 2v2 while the others were playing 4v4, and then it all mixed around. And then in the afternoon, you went out and played 9v9. So across the day, you've played 2v2, 4v4, 9v9 within a day. So just stuff like that, trying to mix up the numbers of players on the pitch, sizes of pitches. I think that's the great thing about playing at different academies. Like I say, different clubs have got different philosophies. We like to probably play on slightly tighter pitches, but you go to places and they like to play on really big pitches. So you get different outcomes, from playing at different venues and stuff. So that's really, really important. The more variety in that aspect in terms of number of players on the pitch, sizes of pitches, sizes of goals, types of games and stuff that you can do. You don't have to just play. Why do we have to play into goals? Why can't we play target games against, why can't Leicester and Man U play 4v4 target game? Or like some of the stuff that we discussed, why can't Man U and Leicester play a little competition in chipping the ball into tyres? You know what I mean? There's stuff like that. I think we have done in the past. We've made it, in Easter breaks and stuff like that. But, it doesn't just have to be a game of football. There's lots of different things I think we can do to enhance that games program and give that variety.
And one of the things that drives me mad is coaches seem to be on this quest to find what is the right age to play 7-a-side. What is the right, under 10, what should we play? Should we play 7-a-side? Should we play 8-a-side? Or when do you start playing 11-a-side? Or
that's
when
the
do you,
thing for me, 11-a-side. There's this mad rush to get to 11-a-side football. And sometimes the kids, I think even when they get to 11s, they're kind of keen for it as well. But I think they're keen for it because the parents are keen for it. They're like, I want my son playing. I want to get into I've heard it loads of times. It's the real game, the proper game. Why is it the proper game? It's not the proper. It's the proper game for adults, but it's not necessarily the proper game for a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boy.
But again, what's the problem if you don't do it every week and all the time? But let's say you got Leicester City's under 10s and Manchester United's under 10s. Let's play 11-a-side for 20 minutes. The kids would love it. How much would the kids enjoy it? And then we play that for 20 minutes, and then we maybe have a 5-a-side tournament. Fantastic stuff. But it's this thing of...
It's also that could be done on the right size pitch. You know what I mean? I see what you go... Yeah. If they get to under 12 and all of a sudden, right, 11v11 now. Okay, you've gone from 7v7 2 years ago to 9v9 last year. Now you're going to play 11v11. By the way, we're playing on this 80-by-50 pitch in like 3/4 goals. Okay, well, my keeper's only like 4 foot tall, and I've got, it's just, it's.
But it's the same to me. It's the same. It's when it's the same diet. So, it used to be, we played 8v8 under. This is quite a while ago now, probably early 2000s. But you played under 9s played 8v8, under 10s played 8v8, under 11s played 8v8. Right?
Yeah.
Didn't play any other format. 8v8, 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 and then under 12s 11-a-side. And you're just giving the kids, it's like taking the same exam over and over and over again. And this is why, to me, there's value, like brilliant, play 2v2s, play 3v3s, play 11-a-side at under 9s for occasionally, but you're not playing the same format every single week.
It's a balance as well. I think obviously the clubs talk a lot now, I'll speak, whoever we've got at the weekend, I know most of the guys across different clubs. And I'll give them a call a week, 2 weeks before and say, look, what numbers have you got? And I think a lot of it's done now on numbers, because ultimately, I think you want the boys playing. You don't want 5 boys stood on the side doing nothing for 40 minutes when you've travelled an hour and a half to go play a game.
Exactly.
They won't benefit from that. So it's about, look, what numbers have you got? What have we got? Let's put something together that worked. No matter what space we've got, we'll make it work. There's 2 9v9s, a 9 and a 7, a 5 and a 7, a 9 and a 5. We've had a lot of 9 and 5s at under 11s at home because we've got the cage. Yeah. So we've got a 5v5 in the cage where the ball's never out of place. They're playing off boards and stuff like that. And you've got the 9v9 on the grass, and then halfway through you'll switch the boys up so they get kind of a mix of everything. But also, there might be boys that either are playing up or maybe playing down that need a certain format. So because they may be a little bit smaller or whatever, you want them on the ball. In a 9v9, they're not getting on the ball. So let's get them on the ball. Let's get them in a 5v5 and let them play that for 80 minutes. Nothing wrong with that, because actually for them, playing 5v5 for 80 minutes is more beneficial than playing 9-a-side for 40 minutes and 5-a-side. You see what I mean? So it's about tailoring it to what individuals you've got and actually what's going to get them the most time on the ball, which is ultimately what you want. You want the boys on the ball and you want them playing.
Absolutely. Now, what about the weekly routine at Leicester for your foundation phase kids? What does that look like?
Different at the minute, obviously.
In a non-COVID world.
In a non-COVID world, it's difficult to think back to what a non-COVID world looks like. It seems like we've been in this bubble for years. I've been out of the office for a year now. I've not been in the actual office for a year. We've trained and obviously been in and out training in between lockdowns and whatever else. But yeah, I guess non-COVID world, thinking back, probably looks like kind of 3 to 4 sessions a week with a game on top of that. Ideally, we're always looking to increase games. In an ideal world, I'd like, or as a club and as a phase, we'd like boys to be getting something like 50 games a season. The Premier League give you, I think, something like 24. Then there's some free weekends which you can top that up to maybe 30, 32. So you're searching for maybe another 18 games / experiences to chuck in those 3v3s, those extra games. So again, non-COVID times, we were, bringing clubs in during the week on a Saturday, doing different stuff that we just talked about. So yeah, maybe trying to get sort of eight games a month would be a target.
And then above that normal program, what about the importance of tournaments and going abroad, like getting kids to experience different cultures, different playing styles, different languages, all these sort of things, taking them overseas, even at the foundation phase? How do you see that?
I think you guys do probably quite a lot, and I know there's a lot of clubs that do a lot. We traditionally haven't done a lot at younger age groups over the years in terms of going abroad. We've started to do it more, and obviously since we won the league in 2016, as you mentioned at the start, I think obviously Leicester's become a bigger club. We're consistently at the minute, in the top kind of 4, 5, 6 in the league, and I think people, recognise Leicester now as a big club, and obviously therefore we start to get invites to more stuff as well. I think going forward, that's really important. But I think there's been a discussion around also maybe not giving them everything straight away. Otherwise what I said, to look forward to when they're 13, 14, 15, 16. So it is a balance, because I think there is a dropout potentially at older age groups. There's we talk about the love of the game. As boys get older, there can be this, I've been here since under 9s, I've done 9s, I've done 10s, 11s, 12s, 13s, it's now 14s. I travel an hour to get there 4 times a week, so it's about, I think, keeping some stuff back sometimes as well. So I think 9s and 10s, we'll probably do more UK based stuff. We like to probably take them away overnight and do UK based stuff, and maybe once they get to 11, start to increase it and do some
specifically, Rich, the tournaments that I organise, right? You like to go to them.
Absolutely, yeah. Those ones are open. They're the ones I was thinking of.
If you want to have a look at them, it's on specialistsoccertours.co.uk. If you want to have
really
a look
good.
at them.
I'd recommend them.
Shameless plug for my tournaments there, but no, I agree with you.
That wasn't even staged either, was it?
But yeah, I think I really agree with you that you've got your normal routine. You want to get the most out of it there, but having those special times when you take the kids away, whether it's in the UK or it's abroad, and you just get to know the kids so much better. You spend time with them, in the hotel or the boarding house, in the dressing rooms and so on, and you just get to find out so much more about them. And
yeah, absolutely. It's really important for that independence. They have to, even though they're that young, they have to learn to do things for themselves. I think sometimes these boys, seen maybe from the outside as well, and to a degree they are academy boys are seen as maybe a little bit pampered. They get everything for them. They get given this, that, and the other, and they don't have to think or do for themselves. By the time they get to the under 18s and towards the 23s, they've had an easy journey. I think that's kind of an image that's seen on the outside sometimes, and we've got to do more in that sense. Like you say, taking them away and telling them, right, you've got to be up for breakfast at X amount of time. You've got to make sure that you've got this kit in your bag. You've got to make sure that you've got X, Y, and Z. When actually at home, the parents do that for them. So actually, that's different for them. Having that independence and having to have you cleaned your teeth. Oh no, okay, go and do it then. Have you got your jacket? Oh no, it's in my room. We'll go back to your room and get it. All these things that I guess
developing the person as well as the player.
Absolutely, and that's huge because ultimately, let's look at figures. I think I saw something. I think it might have been on someone had put on. You commented on your Twitter feed the other day about numbers of boys that actually kind of make it to Premier League. I think it was something like 180 out of millions. I can't remember what the figure was, but we know the figure. The percentage is like 2%. It's minute. So we've got all these boys across the country, all these different clubs. And in actual fact, the percentage of those boys that are actually going to go and play at the top level, Premier League or abroad or wherever, is tiny. So actually, the best thing that we can give these boys is experiences and things that they will remember for a lifetime. Because ultimately, a lot of these boys are going to go out and do a regular job. They're going to go and find a job and have not say a normal life, but you know what I mean, not live a professional footballer's life. They're going to go and live a normal life, and then they can look back and think, I remember that time when I was at Leicester and we went on this tour and I did this and this happened, and I remember the coach and I remember this and I remember that, and I remember we got to a final in that tournament. And giving those experiences and those memories, and that's what it's got to be about.
I'm lucky enough. I'm old enough as well to have seen kids come from that young age into the first team at Manchester United. And when you speak to them and ask them what they don't remember that brilliant coaching session that you did and set the cones out beautifully and this and that. They remember the pillow fights that we had when we went to this tournament over here, or when someone did something silly, in the swimming pool. These are the experiences that really stick with them and make.
You speak to them and they remember how they were treated. And that's exactly a common thing. When I've spoken to them, they remember how they were treated. I love this coach because he treated me like this. They don't, like I said, they don't remember the sessions. They don't remember. And I say that to a lot. I coached our 11s at Leicester. I say to the boys a lot, look, say they've just been beaten by whatever. They've just taken a massive tonking. I say, look, don't worry. You're not going to remember losing 8-0 to whoever you've just played in 8 years' time. You're not going to remember it. It just won't happen. What you will remember is all these different experiences and the things that you'll get from this experience itself. The things that you've learned from losing 8-0, you can now go and help you develop as a person, as a player, and that's key. Getting them to understand that as well. But no, I'm getting to that age. I'm getting to that age as well now, where some boys are getting into the first team and stuff. 14 years ago, some of the boys at Forest, and obviously Sid the other night coming on for Leicester, making his full debut. Sydney Tavares, so he was in my first group at Leicester 8.5 years ago.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So it's great. It's great to see.
All right, Rich. Well, that's going to wrap up the first part of the podcast, and we're going to have a quick break, and then we're going to be joined by Chris from Chicago and Andy from Boston. Thanks a lot, Rich.
No worries.
Okay, let's start the second half of the podcast. We're now going to be joined by Andy Mason from the Boston Bolts and Chris Koenig from the Grange Celtics in Chicago. So, Chris, what would you like to say first?
I guess my first question would be, so when we're talking about, just variety, when you're planning your sessions or delivering your sessions, is there like a specific format that you tend to run, or is it like, do you show up and there's goals set out and you just throw everybody in a game, or do you start with technical aspects and then move into like your main just like coaching point of the day and then you move into games, or is there variety in how you format each session that you give? Because one of the things you mentioned was that in a non-COVID world, you've got 3 to 4 sessions a week. And from my experience, players do tend to like there's a lot of good things that come from being structured and consistent in the way that you deliver things, but then they also need variety where it's not all samey and they get the same thing every time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you want me to go, Tom?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think definitely there's a structure, But I think that structure can and needs to be different every session, because like you said, I think structuring something or the session the same way every session of the week becomes a little bit repetitive. And you know as well as I do, if you do something repetitive in your life, it becomes a little bit boring after a while. You're like, you know, I only did this yesterday, or I only did this 2 days ago. It gets dull. So I think you have to mix it up. You have to, if we go back to the environment side of things, you have to keep it exciting. So I think you've always got to have that in the back of your mind. Is this going to excite the boys? Are they going to love this? Are they going to walk in and think, this is great? Are they going to play with a smile on their face? If not, then you probably need to tweak that session and think about how you can make it a little bit more exciting. Look, they don't have to be smiling for the whole 90 minutes and actually walking around with smiling, but there'll be aspects in there that they think, oh, look, I just want to play in a game. But actually for their development, that 10-minute slot there of something that you're doing technical, that maybe 80% of the boys, I don't really like doing technical practices, but actually they'll get something from it. That's okay, as long as that's not going on for an hour and they're stood there in queues and whatever else. You know, for me, it's about flow. The session has to flow. That's the most important. The most important part of the session for me is the setup. It's about getting there early. It's about having time to set up your session, being prepared. So the easiest way, and the things I've learned over the years as a coach, is almost like your whole session is set up at the start within one area, so that all you have to do is pick up the odd cones. So if you've got different coloured cones or markers, all you have to do after the first practice is pick up 4 markers, and all of a sudden you've got your next area. After that one, all you've got to do is move that goal to there, and all of a sudden the third bit's set up. So you're not having these 5-10 minute breaks in between each bit of your session where the boys are stopping, because that's flow.
I totally agree with that, Rich. I think there's the other factor of, if it's all set out, then I know space is a bit of a limiter on this, but if you've got everything set out, say you've got 3 different areas that you're going to use, and it's all set out and the kids arrive, there's that wow factor of, oh, wow, what are we doing today?
It looks magnificent.
Yeah,
it looks great.
It looks great. So you've got that. And there's that bonus that you said of, we're not spending, we've got to clear all these goals out of the way. We've got to pick up all these cones, and it's going to take us 10 minutes to do that. And while we're doing that, the kids are off, hooping balls all over the place and just losing that focus. So I think you're right on number one is a key part of being a good coach at any level is that preparation and almost visualizing how the session is going to go. So you've played the session out in your mind, and you've made sure that it does flow correctly. And then secondly is just putting it into practice and getting the kids moving from one activity to the other one.
Just simple things, Tom, as well. Like I've seen, because I used to tutor like level 1 courses as well. So just little bits of advice that I used to give to some of those grassroots coaches was like, I've seen coaches stop stuff. So if say the pitch is too small, you think, oh God, this pitch is too small, it's not working. Okay, stop. Okay, what's wrong? Oh, you just need to make the pitch a little bit bigger. So those boys stand still for 2 minutes while you go around making that. It doesn't need to happen, just any adjustments and stuff like that needs to be made. Just do it as it's going on. Just walk around, make things bigger, change things, chuck bibs in, chuck balls in, take balls out. Do what you need to do, but let the boys just carry on. They don't need to see they'll automatically adapt. If they're playing to cones as their markers, if you make them 2 yards wider each side, they're not going to even know, some of them, that you've made it 2 yards wider. They'll just play to those lines, those cones. So stop stuff. Just let the session flow as much as possible and try and keep those breaks.
Now with me as well, with the other point you made about variety, I think there's a balance between changing your sessions and not doing everything so different that the kids have got to learn practices constantly. It's one of the things.
That's a good one.
One of the things that, look, I was, again, another great mentor of mine was a guy called Rennie Moulenstein that a lot of people probably heard of. Now, I worked with Rennie closely, sort of from 2002 for about 3 years. And Rennie, with Rennie, we did a lot of curver stuff. So it was very, setting cones out and doing all those practices. But they were good. But the problem was that the kids had to learn the practice. So they spent 10 minutes learning the practice, and then 5 minutes or 10 minutes, doing the practice, and then we'd never repeat that practice. So then it was learn another one for the next session and learn another. Whereas that, I learned so much from Rennie. He's a fantastic coach. But one of the things actually that I learned from him that I've not followed really from that experience is I have in my head probably half a dozen to 10 games and I just adapt those games. So I might have a particular game, and one session it will be an emphasis on possession, let's say passing and receiving, and then I'll adapt it so the same game with pretty much the same setup, but you just tweak a condition and it becomes a breakout game where there's a lot more running with the ball and quick breakouts. So it's that. So try and keep your organization simple, but keep it quite consistent so the kids aren't having to learn, oh, this is how this practice goes, and they recognize, oh, this is that game, okay, and then you just can tweak it to emphasize different technical aspects.
I think there is a tendency for coaches to do what you just said and like want to recreate the wheel all the time, and I put new stuff in, I've got this new set. But like you say, I think that simplicity is the best thing, because I've been there as a coach, when you've stood there for 10 minutes and they're still not getting it, you start it, you stop it, you start it, you stop it, questions, I don't get it, and it's like you waste so much time trying to explain a game that actually, look, football's simple. Football is it's a simple game, and sometimes I think as coaches we try and overcomplicate it.
And also there's this thing of, I've got all these practices. I remember we had, this is again a long time ago, probably 20 years ago, we had a guy from the FA come to United to give us a bit of coach education, and he was from the Southwest, and he had a bit of, you talk like that, and he was like, I've got 152 different drills like this, and you can imagine everyone's just looking at each other thinking, oh my God, but he felt pride in the fact that he had 152 different drills. Well, to me, that's way too, that's probably about 140 too many. Pick the ones that you like and that work for you, and then that you're happy with and the kids enjoy. And then, like I said, just
like I said, what does football need? It needs think about what the game looks like on a Sunday, and then take aspects of that and put it into practices. So it involves a ball, it involves a certain amount of players. Sometimes those players are overloaded, underloaded. It's towards a target. That target doesn't have to be a goal, like we said earlier. It can be an end zone, it can be higher, it can be a box, it can be anything.
A mannequin, like use a mannequin.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does the game look like on a Sunday? Take those aspects out. It's two teams, a ball, a goal, and then take those aspects and keep it simple. Keep it simple, and then, like I say, you can make progressions and add things in to get your outcomes.
All right. Well, let's get Andy in, because Andy's been waiting patiently. Now, Andy's from Boston Bolts. He's originally from England, so he's got an English accent, but he lives and works over in Boston. Andy, welcome to the podcast, and tell us a bit about yourself and your coaching journey, and then what would you like to comments you'd like to make or questions?
Yeah, cheers, Tom. I think my wife would probably say I'm losing my accent, but I'm trying my best not to. So I'm not going to talk too much about myself, because I think the discussion that you and Rich are having is fantastic. So I was lucky enough to move across to America full time when I was 18. So I've been just working professionally for 12, 13 years in a club environment, and working at a multitude of different levels, ages, stages. And then most recently found myself in the foundation stage. And I think that's the thing that I love doing. It's a real passion now. I think, after you go through a bit of a coaching journey, you end up settling down with what you really enjoy. And that for me is the foundation phase. There's not too many of us in America, but absolutely love it. So this conversation has been fantastic. I've got a couple of things that I wanted to, based on what you and Rich have been talking about, but I wanted to start with a bit of a hot topic. I know it's talked about a lot online, is unopposed practice. When do you do it? How do you do it? Where do you do it? I know you talked about Rene a little bit as well. So I guess, if either you want to jump on unopposed practice, and we'll see where we go.
I'm not a big fan of that, because I think when you've got the kids together, to me, if you've got 15, 20 kids in the same place, then you should be playing games. But however, there are times when I will do some individual unopposed practice, especially against a wall. And I'll do that in order to try and inspire the kids, maybe, or show them things that, look, when you're at home, these are the sort of things you can be doing. Playing, how many times can you kick it against the wall, left foot, right foot, or juggling and things like this. So, yes, I'm very much games for understanding, games based, putting learning technique within a game. I'm a big follower of a guy called Brian Ashton, who used to be the rugby coach for England, who always talks about learning technique within the games, because then you've got decisions and you've got problems there that you've got to solve technically within that game. So I think you've got kids together, get them playing, but occasionally do stuff that on their own, but just to inspire them to go away and practice, when they're not in that group. I don't know what you think, Rich.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I'm a little bit probably more for it than you by the sounds of it, Tom. But I think, like I say, it's for individual game. Like I say, I think some boys take to it more than others. There's part of the Premier League rules where we are. We have to have individual learning plans and stuff like that, and then to carry them out, you have individual practice and stuff like that, and in small groups or groups no bigger than 4. You can do little passing sequences and finishing drills, working on first touch, ball mastery. There's stuff you can do. I think it certainly shouldn't form a large part of your session, like Tom says. I think the games, the opposed stuff is key, because ultimately, again, if you take the game on a Sunday or whenever your games are, there's opposition. You don't play a game without opposition, so that's a fundamental part of your practice. Like I said, you've got a ball, opponents, pitch, goals. So think about what you have on a Sunday and replicate that in your session. But for me, there is a game for some boys more than others. There's some boys that really value that one-to-one work, and again, it's quite a good way of forming relationships with the boys and getting to know them more, and you can really get something out of them.
I just think of Ravel Morrison, who is a fantastic player, Ravel Morrison, and he's still in the game at the moment. But as a 8-9-year-old, him working with Rene, trying to get him to do these complicated curved things, it was just like Ravel. So I think you're right. For some kids it works, some kids it doesn't.
And that's about knowing the kids. It's about picking and choosing, knowing the kids, what you can get out of them. Because ultimately, if you're going to force that upon them and they don't enjoy it, then they're not really going to get anything from it anyway. They're not going to get the gains that you want them to get, because they're not in the right headspace for it. They don't enjoy it. They'll just kind of go through the motions. And to do those technical practices, they've got to be done well. Because to get any gain from them, they've got to be done well. That's what it's all about. It's about refining that technique, making sure that it's right, and then putting it back into a competitive or opposed situation.
Yeah, for me, technique always comes with a decision. So whatever technique it is, there's a decision involved with it. And I just think that that solitary practice, there's repetition. Obviously, there's value in repetition, and I think you do that away from your club setting when you're on your own. You can't just turn up. Like Rich said before, you do 3-4 sessions a week. You can't just do 3 or 4 sessions a week and expect to reach the level to play in the Premier League in England or wherever. You've got to be just obsessed by it, really. And those are the kids that are often there. The mums are saying, "Oh, I can't stop him playing in the kitchen. He's dribbling the ball around the house." And it's like, well, great. This is what kids need to do. In the garden, against a wall, Bobby Charlton just lashing the ball against the wall constantly.
That's what I used to do as a kid. I used to be out there smashing the ball against the wall for 20 minutes, half an hour at a time. Yeah.
Imagination, again, going back to someone like Eric Cantona, who, again, when I started at United, was a massive player at the club, and he talked a lot about imagination. That was a key to being a great player, was imagination. So use that imagination. So when you're at home, imagine that you are, at Old Trafford and you're just about to score, and imagine, so use the environment that you've got. Imagine that you're in a game situation when you are on your own. But when you've got the kids together, for me, get them playing. Chris, have you got any other points? Chris might be with his little baby. Andy?
No, I'm still here.
Oh,
still
Chris
here. I was just muted. Sorry.
Oh.
But the baby was crying, so yes.
Okay. Chris has got a 3-week-old baby with him.
Yes, I do. So the thing you were talking about, the sliding scale between like learning and winning, just putting the emphasis like where you want to like end up on that sliding scale between learning and winning. And one of the things that I've come to realize is, or just where I stand on it, is that like learning, that winning a lot of times will be a result of how much learning they've done. and whether or not they have the answers to the questions that are posed to them, like in a game environment. Like, do you find that to be the case more often than not, that like if their sessions are good, and the games that they're playing, and how much they think about the game, and how much even when they leave, are they thinking about the next one? Do you find that when they get in a quote unquote a competitive game playing against somebody else, that if they've learned the things they need to learn, that they'll have the skills and the tools to be able to solve the question that's posed to them, rather than putting it on the end result of like winning is the important part, not learning the tools to be able to win?
Yeah, I think so. I think with the ages that we're working with, winning and the way that they perform can depend on what day of the week it is. Some of them, you know what I mean, or what they've had in the week, and they're so young. If they've had a day at school, or they've had a sleep over the night before, it's so changeable. I think it's not like boys when they get older and whatever else. We're working with boys that go to bed with teddies still. We're working with young boys. And, you know what I mean? We're expecting it. It can't be about winning. That's not the important aspect here. The important thing is that the most important thing is that they're enjoying it. That is absolutely the fundamental thing at those ages. We've got to go back to the thing that we talked about at the start. They've got to fall in love with the game. They've got to love their football. Winning forms part of that, because when they win, they're happy. When they lose, they're sad. But ultimately, when they lose and they're sad, they have the hour journey home. They get some food in them, and they're back on their PS4 or their Xbox, and they've forgotten about it a lot of the time. You know what I mean? They're not like us as adults. We probably think about losing games for the rest of the week until the next game comes around. It's different as a kid. It's forgotten about. There's something else, something more interesting going on in their life.
Regularly get kids where the final whistle goes and they've lost and they're in tears, and it's like the worst thing that's ever happened. Yet 10 minutes later, they're in the changing rooms and they're shouting and screaming and singing songs, and you don't even know they've played a game. So I definitely agree.
And that's what we're working with. And so for me, it's got to be constantly about learning. But you're right, there is a link. I think the more experiences they have, the more they learn, and then ultimately, that does, I guess, lead to winning. But it's based on a lot of things at those ages. It's very, very unpredictable. You can have a group of boys that maybe go on a run of winning 6-7 weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden go and lose 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row. It doesn't mean they're bad players. It's just the way things. That's just the age we're working with. And it
I got to admit, Mitch, a lot of the time, I don't even know what the score is when the games are going on.
I don't either.
No, because, again, big part of when a game's going on for me, I try and make sure my body language is really upbeat and making sure that, usually there's a guy sat next to me, Graham Buckingham, and we have a chat. And so the kids are looking over and we're having a laugh about something. And to me, that just takes all the pressure out of the game. If they're looking over and as a coach, you've got your arms folded and you're grimacing or you're shouting and screaming, then that's just pressure, and it doesn't make kids happy. Whereas if they look over and
you don't want to look like Bielsa on the sideline.
But also, I think it's important that as coaches we support them. I think a lot of coaches that I see get it the wrong way around. Coaches want to be involved with the winning team, so when their team's winning, you hear loads of them. You hear them shout, this. So they're involved with it. And when they're losing, all of a sudden they're really quiet. And so for me, it's got to be the other way around. Those boys need support. So if they're losing a game of football, they need your support in terms of how can you help them? How can you help them? Because they need you at that time. They don't need you when they're cruising and they're flying. You can just sit back and have that. That's the time you should be sat back and enjoying it. And I think a lot of the time we get that the wrong way around. I see that a lot.
Yeah, so there was a quick thread that I didn't want to lose here. So like, say your team gets tonked, 6-7-0 2 weeks in a row, and we're talking about how 10-15 minutes later they could be talking about what they're going to have for dinner, or their fresh game that they got on their Xbox. But like, if we're talking, the question I'm getting to is, how much coaching do you do of the parents, where if they've got an hour ride home and the parent is really, really invested in the success of their child, and they're approaching the game like an adult, talking about, you know, what mistakes they made, what they could have done better here and there, and it really turns them off. And these, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old boys are hyper analyzing, you know, an hour out of, you know, the 7 or 8 that they had during the week. How much coaching of parents goes in?
Yeah, we try and do a lot with the parents. We do a lot the pre-academy stuff. So before they're signed as academy players, we give them lots of information, and we talk to them a lot about kind of how they can support. But ultimately, look, you know, we see the boys for, say, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours a week. The parents see the boys a lot more, you know, like say in those car journeys at home. They're the biggest influence on them, and ultimately we can only advise and support, you know, how we support them, or how they should support the boy, but ultimately they're the parent, and we can't control what goes on once they leave the academy. We just try and say, look, you be the parent, let us be the coach. You know, your job is to be the parent, to love them, to support them, to cuddle them when they're crying because they're upset, and to praise them when they're happy and they've done well. And our job is to make them better footballers. And if we can get those jobs lined up, then you've got a better chance. And the best thing a parent can ask when they get in the car is, did you enjoy it? That should be the first question. Did you enjoy it? Yeah. If they want, what did you learn today? That's another good question. Not, tell you what, when you should have done this, or you should have done X, Y, and Z when this happened. And do you remember that situation when he had the ball? And all that sort of stuff should be left alone. But ultimately, there are parents out there that will do that, and you know, that's out of our control. But you're right. Yeah, you know, it's important to do stuff with the parents and work with the parents to try and educate them to support the boy.
Andy, do you have a final question before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think, what do you think is the coach's role in the practice environment? Because I think traditionally it's been very explicit, where they're just giving solutions and they've got their set coaching points and they're going to work through those coaching points regardless. But I think there's a bit of a shift now to them being more of an environment creator, where they just create the environment for all of this. You use the word a lot, chaos, and I love that word, chaos. But I think a lot of coaches are still very hesitant to put on a messy session because of how it is perceived. But I think the best sessions are messy. The best sessions are chaotic. So what are your thoughts on the practice environment?
I think I always say that a lot of coaches think that it's their job to solve the puzzle for the player, whereas related to what Rich was saying earlier about the planning and creating the session beforehand is the key thing. I think it's my role to set the puzzle, and in doing that, you know, create challenges, and then allow the kid time to solve the puzzle. So don't shout out all the answers, you know, set the puzzle for them and then step back and see how they do. And don't step in the first time that they make a mistake. Don't step in, just allow them and see if they'll actually solve the puzzle themselves, because that's learning by experience. And I find that's far more powerful if you've got a kid that's learning from their own experience, far more powerful learning than if a coach is constantly telling them the answers all the time. So set the puzzle, allow the kids to work it out, and give them lots of time to do that. That's what I would say. What do you say, Rich?
Couldn't agree more. I think we over here we have the Advanced Youth Award stuff that's been around for a few years, and coaches had to go through that. I'm sure you've done them, Tom. You know, a lot of that stuff is around it kind of went on a different pathway to the A license and the B license stuff, where it was, you know, to A license, B license was very structured. These are your key coaching points. You'll get them out in this order. You'll do this. Whereas the advanced was more related to probably what we do at Foundation, where it's kind of, you know, like Tom said, set the game up. Here's your game. Here's some challenges. Think about X, Y, and Z, and then don't just step on it as soon as they make a mistake and correct it for them. They've got to solve these problems themselves. If you know we're solving it for them, they're not going to learn. So that's Tom.
One of my mentors, Eric Harrison, he said the most important quality of a coach is observation. And so if you think about that, that's setting something up, or the game or whatever, then if you are constantly ranting and raving and frantic and you're too emotionally involved, then you know you're not observing, and you need to observe then to see what you're going to do next. Because
I think again though, you look at that and I think some coaches are not scared, but they sense what's the opinion of other people that are watching, parents that are watching, or maybe management that are watching you coach and not saying anything. What's the perception of those people? And I think some people then feel I have to say something because they're expecting me to say something. So there is that perception. So again, it's getting over that and being strong and confident in what you're doing. And couldn't agree more. It's about setting challenges, observing, and then for me, working with individuals. While the game's going on or while the practice is going on, you don't need to stop everyone to go and talk to that one player. Just pull him to one side for 10, 20 seconds and just have a chat and say, what do you think about this? Can you try and do that? Can you try and whatever it might be, set him a new challenge from what you've observed.
Great stuff, Rich. Well, thank you very much, Rich Keeling from Leicester City. And thanks a lot, Chris, from the LaGrange Celtics in Chicago. Thanks, Andy Mason from the Boston Bolts. If you have any questions, any comments you'd like to make about the podcast, please email us at podcast@goplaysoccer.com. And also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you'd like to get involved and be with us and ask questions of the coaches here, then send us an email again at podcast@goplaysoccer.com, and we'll try and get you on. But thanks, guys. That was superb, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening, and if you have a question or comment for us, or if you'd like to take part in one of our podcasts, please email podcast@goplaysoccer.com.